Hi, this is SaurabhJaiswal. Today I am going to talk about reforms in the fertilizer sector as part of the Indian economy and policy project. As we know, one of the vital sector for the Indian economy is the fertilizer sector, as it manufactures a very critical raw material for agriculture, which is the major occupation in the country. I'm going to discuss what possible reforms the government can bring in, but before that, let's first understand the important features of the fertilizer sector, which brings major distortions and that needs to be fixed. The government spends around 0.5% of the GDP on fertilizer subsidy, and 70% of that is allocated to urea. For agriculture, there are three basic types of fertilizers used: urea, DAP, and MOP. Urea among them is the most produced, the most consumed, and the most imported. And most importantly, it faces the most government intervention and thus making it the most controlled fertilizer, with 50% under the fertilizer ministry's movement control compared with 20% for DAP and MOP. But in the same proportion, it also receives the largest subsidy, which is nearly 70% of the total fertilizer subsidy. Government intervention in urea and DAP MOP differ not just in scale but also in kind. DAP and MOP producers and importers receive a nutrient based subsidy based on a formula that determines the amount of N, P, and K, that is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, in a given amount of fertilizer. Import of DAP and MOP are also not controlled, but in urea's case, it is very different. The government intervention is high in this. Government sets a controlled maximum retail price at which urea must be sold to the farmers. It provides a subsidy to 30 domestic producers, that is firm specific on a cost plus basis, meaning that more inefficient producer gets larger subsidies. It provides a subsidy to importers, that is consignment specific. The imports are also canalized, as only three agencies are allowed to import urea into India. About half of the movement of fertilizer is directed, that is because of the government, which tells manufacturers and importers how much to import and where to sell their urea. So nearly all actors, consumers, producers, importers, and distributors, are controlled. These distortions feed upon each other and together create an environment that leads to a series of adverse outcomes, which is described further. Urea is only subsidized for agricultural uses. Subsidies like this violate what we call the one product, one price principle. The intuition that products which are essentially the same should be charged essentially the same price, else there will be incentives to divert the subsidized commodity from eligible to ineligible consumers. It feeds a thriving black market, diverting urea to industry and possibly across the borders to Bangladesh and Nepal. Research has shown that around 51% of the farmers buys urea above MRP, and in the neighboring states of the Bangladesh, in India, nearly 100% of the farmers had to buy urea at above MRP in the black market. Canalization also aggravates the black market effects, as only three firms are allowed to import urea, and this is also controlled by the government, and the information takes around 60 to 70 days to reach the importers from the fertilizer department, which creates a delay which exacerbates shortages, which also boosts the black market. The black market hurts mostly the small and medium scale farmers, because the large scale farmers have good contacts, so they are the one who use uh, the fertilizers urea as at a lesser price, but smaller and medium scale farmers get it at higher price. The model for subsidy for urea is flawed, which is subsidy based on the cost of production. So it lets inefficient fertilizers manufacturer to survive for a long time with their inefficient nature. Over usage of urea has various environmental and health implications. The overuse worsens the soil and causes soil erosion and degradation. For the reforms, there have been numerous reforms in recent times in the fertilizer sector, such as neem coating of urea to prevent diversion of urea to industrial uses, and gas pooling to induce efficiency in production. These are the steps in the right direction. Fertilizer accounts for largest large fiscal subsidies, about 0.673 lakh crore or 0.75%, 0.5% of the GDP, the second highest after food. Modi government in 2017, after the Uttar Pradesh elections win, decided to fast-track the implementation of the direct benefit transfer system for payment of fertilizer subsidy to farmers. Subsidy, which is often seen as a converse of a tax, is an instrument for fiscal policy. These are designed to help economy and the people. The most important explicit subsidies administered through the central government budget are food and fertilizer subsidies. The fertilizer subsidy constitutes around 25% of the total subsidy in India. Furthermore, India can bring in new policies to bring new reforms in the sector. First, government can bring in policy to decanalize urea imports, which would improve the number of importers, which would allow the importers to respond flexibly and quickly to changes in demand. It would in return decrease black marketing, and the importers will be better equipped to tackle shortages. Secondly, urea can be brought under the nutrient-based subsidy program currently in place for DAP and MOP, which would allow domestic producers to continue receiving fixed subsidies based on the nutritional content of their fertilizers, while deregulating the market. That would allow domestic producers to charge market prices. This would encourage fertilizer manufacturers to be efficient, as they could then earn greater profits by reducing cost and improving urea quality. Thirdly, a universal subsidy with cap on number of bags, by imposing a rule that each household can purchase uh, a few number of bags, and that would require biometric authentication at the point of sale, which would also curb or tackle the problem of black marketing. Thank you.